Haraway's concept of making beings killable can help us understand this form of ecological biopower. For Haraway, killing other animals is not necessarily a problem. What is a problem, she argues, is making them killable. As Etienne Benson explains, an animal is made killable when the animal is placed in a category of living things whose killing does not have any moral significance. According to Haraway, it's a misstep to separate the world's beings into those who may be killed and those who may not, and a misstep to pretend to live outside killing. And I'm quoting here. Instead of resorting to such taxonomic hierarchies, as she puts it, which render particular beings killable without further debate, we need to stay with the trouble, she writes. This means grappling with the ethics of killing and letting die on a case-by-case basis, without recourse to taxonomic hierarchies or other ethical shortcuts. According to Tom Van Doren, the label invasive species performs a deadly kind of ethical work, rendering the animals who are classified as such killable without further debate. We need not concern ourselves with whether or how these animals are killed, because the term invasive species already does the ethical thinking for us. So once an animal is labeled invasive, they may be killed in ways that would never be acceptable for their non-invasive conspecifics. In short, an animal who has been labeled invasive is no longer worthy of moral consideration. The concept of humane killing does not apply to them. They are not entitled to a good death. The concept of the sociozoologic scale is another way of understanding the ethical work performed by the category invasive species. Arnold R. Luke and Clinton Sanders distinguished this scale from the phylogenetic scale. Although both scales rank organisms on what they call a ladder of moral worth, the scales differ with regard to the basis for the ranking. The phylogenetic scale is essentially a scientific-sounding version of the great chain of being. Species are ranked from high to low in terms of their biological complexity, with humans on the top rung and invertebrates and plants on the bottom. As its name suggests, the phylogenetic scale has a biological basis, though it is a thoroughly normative concept as well. It's based on a particular notion of biological complexity, and it's also based on the implicit claim that such complexity is morally relevant. The sociological scale the sociozoologic scale operates according to a different logic. R. Luke and Sanders explained, quote, while phylogenetic systems of classification rank animals on the basis of biological distinctions, sociozoologic systems rank them according to how well they seem to fit in and play the roles they are expected to play in society. How well animals seem to know their place and stay in it will determine their worth and position on the social ladder, end quote. Invasive species are ranked alongside vermin on the sociozoologic scale. They are organisms out of place, a kind of living pollution in Mary Douglas's sense of the term. So to wrap up, to understand how the animals on the dock were made killable without further debate and without regard for their welfare, we need to examine how the sociozoologic scale intersects with the phylogenetic scale. Although two members of the same species occupy the same rung on the phylogenetic scale, they occupy quite different rungs on the sociozoologic scale if one is classified as native and the other is classified as invasive. Likewise, two individuals who occupy the same rung on the sociozoologic scale, say an invasive crab and an invasive feral pig, may receive radically different treatment depending upon where they happen to fall on the phylogenetic scale. In order to understand how scientists and managers think about the ethics of managing invasive species, we need to examine how these two scales intersect. What made the animals on the dock unworthy of moral consideration was not just that they had been classified as invasive, nor was it simply that they were regarded as mere invertebrates. What made them unworthy of moral consideration was that they occupied the lower rung on both these ladders of moral worth. They were unworthy of moral consideration not because they were invasive or because they were invertebrates, but because they were invasive invertebrates. Thank you.